here, and that you would use this, produce fruit according to your plan for each and every one of us. And so we pray this in Jesus' name and for his glory. Amen. I know that Jill is first.
Or laws or rules, okay? So the next question is, and again, another trick question, who is the ultimate authority in our country?
We the people.
Okay, you Christians, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd jump one. Okay, we the people. Have you got your little constitutions in your hands, right? So it's the first. So that's why you have your little constitution. Okay. So the first three words of the Constitution of the United States. We the people. Okay. As a Christian, who is our ultimate authority? Jesus, that's right. Jesus is our king. Remember when we had Bill Federer here? Yes. Who is king in America? Okay? So in our government is a government of the people, for the people, by the people, right? Okay? So let's pretend this is the government. All right? So when we Christians step out of the government, who do we take with us? Jesus, God. Right? And who is left to run the government? The people that do not have Jesus, right? So it is our duty as Christians to be involved in politics. Don't be afraid of that word, okay? It's the process of making policies, rules, and laws, okay? And who instituted law? Give you another hint. God instituted law. It's an excellent class on the Constitution. So, excuse me, I have a lot of stuff here.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Jill. I know Jill helped me when I was running for the Evergreen School Board. We went around her precinct knocking on doors. And I want to thank Rich Blum. He's been an awesome pastor, one of the few in the area that gets out into the community and speaks truth. And, you know, he very encouragement to me. And, you know, if churches just stay in their four walls and we're not out there in the community, you know, the other side's very happy to get out there and take all these school board positions and county council and city council and state representative if we're not involved and out there. So I just want to thank him for his encouragement. You know, I retired early at the age of 57 in 2017. And prior to that, I used to see things going on in the community and I'd want to do something about it, get involved. But, you know, being married with kids and working 40 plus hours a week and very involved in the church we were in, I just didn't quite have the time to really do it. And then God blessed, and I was able to retire early, and I was happy, you know, being still very involved in the church, but, you know, just going, bought an RV, saw the country, you know, my grandkids were in Missouri, and the opportunity to do that. But God brought something. It was the January of 2019, I saw something coming up for the library, and it was called Drag Queen Story Hour. And I thought, what is that? And I looked into it, and it's exactly as it sounds. A fully dressed drag queen comes in, reads gender-confusing stories to a target audience of 3-year-olds to 8-year-olds. And that was just over the line for me. I just had to do something. I didn't know what I was doing, but God did. So, yeah, the worst part too was I did a little research and found that the individual they were coming to, the drag queen they were coming to do the story hour, his name was Claire, apparently, that's his stage name, and he had this horrid video on his website, YouTube video, where he was did a performance around, it was around a school bus, a cardboard cutout of a school bus, large one, and he was in a dress, and it had to do with Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a kid's show. And a common grooming technique is to take something kids love and twist it and make it sexual. And that's exactly what he did. He's dancing around the school bus. This is a performance on the stage. And it was a year or two before he came to the library. But he's, like I said, he's in a dress and he's dancing around the school bus to a song. And then about halfway through the song, the person behind the school bus holds out a replica male piece of the anatomy. I don't think I need to go further. And this individual then starts stroking it and performing oral, and then at the end, mimicked anal penetration. And this is the guy they picked to come. I mean, it's bad enough picking a drag queen, but this guy, and any kid that would see him if they went on their parents' phone and typed in Claire apparently, this video would be one of the things that could potentially pop up. So, I emailed the board, the executive director. Over 100 people emailed the executive director saying, don't do this. Well, they went ahead and did it. So that was February 9th, 2019. So I showed up down there with my wife and my youngest 9-year-old daughter at the time. And we had a sign that just said, we love you, but not Drag Queen Story Hour. And, people were coming in, some of them bringing in their kids. And some of the people with my 9-year-old daughter there would flip us off after reading the sign. And you're on the right side when the other side does that. So it's just confirmation. So 10 days later was the library board meeting. And I got about a dozen people to come with me, and 75 people ended up showing up. And these library board meetings usually is just 2 to 3 people that show up outside of the people that have to be there. And 22 of us spoke out, 20 of us were speaking against it. Strangely, there were 2 people speaking for it. And from that night, I brought a pledge form, keep the library safe for children, and it was to vote no on the next levy until such time as they stop having Drag Queen Story Hour. And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, but God did. And that night I got about 50 signatures from people there. And the next, I'll bring this up first. God kind of confirmed what I was doing was the right thing. Because 4 days later, my mom calls me out of the blue. I usually call her, they're back east. And she calls me, and talking with my dad that night, he accepted the Lord. Yeah, I'd love to get into the story, want to share other things, but it just confirmed that I was, I had spoken to him dozens of times about the Lord, and it was always, we grew up Catholic, and we were all Catholic, growing up, but he would always say, my father's Catholic, I'm Catholic, it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Well, this night, just the Holy Spirit just opened his heart and gave me the words, and it's just God blessing. So to God be the glory. And amen. So the following month, March of 2019, the day before, I had stopped in at Revival Church. It's a Russian church on Choclaw, pretty big church, about 2,000 people. And I got to speak for about a minute there. And it's Russian speaking, so Sergei Savistinov, his name, is the guy that had me come. And Heidi St. John kind of worked it out. And anyway, so I got to speak and just told them about the board meeting coming up the next day. And they had pictures of drag queens on there. They were like warming the people up, like, this is what's going on. And so he interpreted, and the next day, 200 of them showed up at the library board meeting. It was unbelievable. That was at Three Creeks Library, and we packed out the library. In fact, 100 of them had to be outside because the foyer couldn't hold everyone. And it just really spoke to the library board. And I had brought 50 shirts that said "Library Strong" on the front, and "Keep the library safe for children" on the back. And I handed them out, and I could have handed out 200. And then during the meeting, it was they opened it up for the public, and they said they could fit 50 people in the room. So I turned around and said, "Everybody with a shirt in the room," because I wanted just that visual, like, wow, these guys, organized. It's only been a month that we did this, and so we had And I had 1,000 signatures at that point. So, and I spoke and told them, you know, I have 1,000 signatures here, please don't, you know, bring this back. And, you know, sadly, we had them on the ropes, I think, for a little bit there, but sadly, they kind of doubled down after a month or two, and we still kept coming. I've been to 69 of the last 72 library board meetings, speaking at just about all of them. So, but I'll share some, you know, I got these signatures and went to the Republican Party, let me in the booth at the Clark County Fair that August of 2019, and I got over 500 signatures. Other people were helping with that. And September came around, I had 3,000 signatures and thought that would be what would work, because they wanted to do a new levy. In fact, they're coming out with a levy this year. But I'll maybe mention a little bit that later. But, you know, I did research on the previous levy, and it was 2010, and it passed by only 495 votes out of 87,000 people that voted, really close. So I thought, if I get signatures, you know, by that time I had 3,000, that was 6 times their margin of error. So I really thought that would really push it over the edge. Like, come on guys, don't have another one. But no, they had one in July that year at the Esther Short Park during a Gay Pride Festival. So, you know, not good, very bad. And then in October, they were having another one of 2019. So they weren't listening. And so I kind of came a different route. A lot of you know Eileen Quire O'Brien. She attended here for years. Yeah, awesome woman. She was Clark County Chair at the time. Oh, yeah, Shirley, thank you. Jim, Mazina, yes. And I met with her, and it was April of that year, and I had 1,400 signatures at that point, and I shared with her, and you know, she was very concerned about it. And I told her about my dad even coming to Christ, and she actually had a tear come down her eye, and it was like, she was on my side. And she ended up talking with Gary Medvigi, another county councilor, and he was like, yeah, we don't want that. And she had me talk with him, and Gary was all on board. And then a little while later, Karen Bowerman got on the board, and Karen was not on board with Drag Queen Story Hour. So I had 3 people of the 5 on the board that were against it. And the important part there is the library board is 3 of the 7 people that are on the board are appointed by the Clark County Council. And 2 are by the city of Vancouver. You have to live in the city for those 2 positions, and I didn't have any sway with them because they're basically liberal, but I had at least 3 people on the Clark County board, the majority, in favor of what I was doing. And as positions came open, I would get our people to apply. On my pledge form, I had a space there for email. I didn't have it originally, I had it real small, but I made it bigger after a few months because people couldn't cram it in. But that was my way of keeping in touch with people. And every month I'd email, you know, however many people were there. And today I email about 2,500 people every month, or on occasion when things need to get a hold of them. So I put out there, hey, there's a position open. If you live Clark County at large, outside of the city limits, you can apply. And we got, the first person was actually, she could even be here. She attends this church, Penny Love Hensley. Yeah, awesome woman. She applied, and she was our first board member on the board. And then about a year later, another position came open. We got Christy Morgan on the board, and another one of our people. And her husband Doug Doug Morgan's a PCO for the Republican Party. And then there ended up being a position, it was in 2022, opened up in Klickitat County. And I didn't have bandwidth out there, you know, and didn't really know too many people out there. So, but Gary Medvigi had me contact Richard Mahar. He's a Skamania County councilman a few years earlier. And because he had told him about Drag Queen Story Hour, and Richard was like, what is that? And he said, well, let me have this other guy call you, he knows all about it. So I called him one night, and for 45 minutes we talked, and he's like, yeah, I don't want that in Skamania County either. And so I knew I had a person there I could trust. And so I called him because, Skamania and Klickitat are next to each other, and I figured, well, maybe he knows someone on the Klickitat County Council that would be against Drag Queen Story Hour. So I called him, and he luckily remembered me, and he did know someone. He said, call, I think his name was Larry Josephson. He said, call Larry, and he'll get back to you. So I called Larry, and Larry's like, yeah, I don't want that. And I said, well, Larry, do you know some people that could apply? Because Klickitat, Goldendale, that's 2 hours away. I don't really have anybody out there. And he's there, no, but I do know a Goldendale city councilman who had, they were having an issue with the library, and a lady had been escorted out of the library by the police because she was questioning some of the books, genderqueer and a couple of others, and she wasn't violent or anything, she was just questioning, and the librarian freaked out and called. Well, I thought maybe she might be a little too volatile to maybe apply, but she did, and guess what? She got on the board. Olga Hodges, awesome woman, and yeah, she's a spitfire, so she's not afraid. And it was interesting, I called Larry up and thanked him for getting her on the board, and he told me the story, and it was kind of cool to hear this. He's there, well, I wanted a person on the health board, but they already had, I didn't have the votes, and it was only a 1-year term, and I figured, well, I can get someone the next year on it. But, I told him, if you vote for my library person, I'll vote for your health person. So it was like, they do horse trading, I guess, behind the scenes. So, and he's there in the library position's a 7-year term. So he's there, it was a good deal. I locked up 7 years, and I'll get my person next year. So, yeah, just amazing what God can do, and this is, to God be the glory. This is all Him working this out. So, we've got 4 people on the board now, and the majority, and they haven't had another Drag Queen Story Hour since 2019. And part of that was COVID to begin with, because COVID hit in 2020, and they were closed for about 1.5 years, but we still pay taxes to them. Figure that out. But anyway, but now we got the 4 on the board, and I feel confident that this is pretty much a done and dead issue, although the Columbian, when they found out I was getting people on the board, put me on the front page back in December of 2022 and put in something in there that was a lie. Said I said something that was not said, and I even have public records requests to prove it. But in any event, I want to switch gears now and talk about the school, because I don't know how much more time I got. Yeah, okay, another 15 minutes. All right. I got involved with the library issue. I got to know people, and one you guys already mentioned, Jennifer Hine-Withy, and she clued me in about stuff going on in the school, because I was clueless, I didn't realize. And in Battleground in 2019, October 2019, they were putting through this comprehensive sex ed, and parents were upset, and I ended up printing up some School Strong shirts, and yeah, right there.
In Olympia, and obviously he can't tell us about all 2,000 bills, so he's going to be just really focusing on the ones that we as Christians are really concerned about. So get out your pencils and write down the numbers. Thank you, John.
She is an amazing lady. She's a true believer in taking what she believes and putting into action. So thank you so much for coming tonight. I truly, truly appreciate it. When I talk to people about the political landscape, one of the things that comes to mind is, why are people of faith so bad at politics? And I don't mean this in a bad way, but this is a bit of honesty. What do each of us do every single day? We live our values. What are those values? It is faith, family, and friends. And therefore, where do we spend the overwhelming majority of our time? With our faith, with our family, and our friends. And therefore, politics doesn't fit in for the average person of faith because they're busy doing their job. They're busy taking care of their home, their children, and taking care of their friends and neighbors. And so it becomes a challenge for us to get people to show up and speak up and to try and make a difference when it comes to politics. And so I want to thank Jill. Her ESPN was working because she stole a couple of my slides tonight in showing you what's going on. But Olympia is an amazing place. I can't even begin to tell you how energized I am every morning up there. Our state legislature sets a budget for 2 years. And so the first year of the 2-year budget cycle, we meet for 105 days and we pass a 2-year budget. And then the second year, we meet for 60 days. So we are now 6 weeks in to a 15-week legislative session. And again, I can't begin to tell you how energized I am. I am usually in the office sometime between 6 and 7 in the morning, and I'm going 12 to 14, occasionally 15 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, I come home on the weekends and things start happening, and I get invited by wonderful people like you. And trust me, I delight. If I am going to represent you, I need to be in front of you so that I know what your concerns are. As my dear friend, former Clark County Commissioner David Medor constantly said, his job was to represent the concerns of the people. David, I love you, brother. I think of that every day. I really do. But I am totally energized with everything I do. You will hear when you read the newspapers and the TVs and things that Washington State has a budget crisis. It doesn't. In fact, we are expecting to take in more revenues for this 2-year cycle than we took in 2 years ago. So what's the crisis? Well, in the words of Rahm Emanuel, who was the chief of staff for President Obama, never let a crisis go to waste. Well, if you don't have a crisis, let's create one. And so the Democrats, when they crafted the bill 2 years ago, they projected revenue growth at 6, 8, 10% a year. Life was so good. They were getting all this free COVID money from the federal government, and our coffers are filling. So we are expecting all of this money, and so they projected a 4-year budget. And now, all of a sudden, reality is hit. The crisis is over. All that free federal money is no longer coming in, and they're, we have a $10 or a $12 billion deficit. Now, we're going to take in about $2 billion more for the next budget cycle than we expected, and what we allocated 2 years ago in the last 2-year budget. Easy solution. What would a business person do? Guess what? I adopted a budget 2 years ago. Let's adopt that same budget, and then if we've got some hard choices to make, we can allocate a little of the leftover, and life is good, right? No, Democrats are screaming bloody murder. They want that crisis as an excuse to try and find reasons to raise your taxes. And oh my gosh, are they ever talking about some amazing ways to raise your taxes? So I will pivot briefly and swear back to my dear friend PCO Jill, who shared something earlier about you making a difference. Will you go to the next slide, my friend in back? The road usage charge is a new tax, an added tax that the state legislature has proposed off and on for several years, and they wanted to bring it back. And so Representative Jake Fye in the House, he's chair of the House Transportation Committee, and I'm privileged to sit on that committee with him. He introduced it, but the people, you schedule a first reading, and then you schedule a public hearing. Well, delightfully, the word got out around the state, and the morning of the hearing, people had signed in to testify, but you can also do what Jill said and just do that 1 minute, 2 minute check-in online and register pro or con. And delightfully, out of 20,223 citizens that did that, 19,927 said not only no, but heck no. And only 239 people were for, and for some strange reason, 57 people couldn't make up their mind and checked other. But delightfully, the hearing went on, and usually the next step, if they feel good about it, the party in control in Olympia will then schedule an executive session where then the committee has to vote. Based on that unbelievable, unprecedented number of citizen inputs, they did not schedule the road usage charge for an executive session to vote it out of committee, after which it would have gone to the floor in the House and then potentially passed over to the Senate. So for this year, most likely with a small asterisk, the road usage charge is dead. And that happened because of people like you. Truly, the people weighed in and said not only no, but heck no. So let's move to another thing. If you've been paying at least a little bit of attention, my friends, there was discussion about a bill that wanted to triple the annual increase in property taxes. Right now, the state constitution allows government agencies to increase your property taxes by 1% a year. And there's a lot of hodgepodge in that, because if you're getting your property taxes, in fact, bills just showed up in the last week or so, you know they're going up more than 1% a year. But in a macro sense, the law allows 1% a year. Democrats said, we need more of your money. And they introduced a bill to allow every government agency to raise them 3% a year. The cities, the counties, and the state. And so once again, and it wasn't this huge, but it was on that order. This is 99% con. On the 3% increase, I think it was about 98% no. So again, the people spoke, and for the moment it appears that bill too is dead for this year. The sad reality on this, for you, we need to energize you and keep you involved, is that Democrats don't take no for an answer. And I will use the Climate Commitment Act as an example. Jay Inslee served as our governor for 12 years, 3 terms. His very first year, he wanted a carbon tax. He wanted, we're going to destroy the planet, so I need to pick your pockets for money. And every year or every other year, some form of a carbon tax came back, and it was no, no, no. They didn't have the votes in the House or the Senate or whatnot. And literally at the end of his career, Jay Inslee gets his climate tax via the Climate Commitment Act, and they have picked about $3 billion out of the pockets of Washington citizens. And if you're a business person, you know that if a business has to pay higher costs on things, the business doesn't pay it. It gets passed on to the customer. Whether it is your groceries, the price of your eggs, the price of the gas that goes in the truck to deliver it, everything. And so we have our own self-induced inflation right now happening in Washington State because the cost of everything is up significantly. We are one of the 3, I think we were number 3 in the nation for highest cost of groceries. It's absolutely outrageous. Everybody's feeling the pinch. As your legislator, no matter who comes to my office, Everybody's talking about the affordability crisis. Everybody's budget is tight. They're hurting for money. They're looking how to make ends meet. Whether it's poor moms looking on their groceries or the cost of child care, employers are saying there's proposals to make the minimum wage go up. They can't afford it. People complaining about their insurance, whether it's your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance. A friend, a constituent, just passed along a cost of their homeowner's insurance. They just got the annual renewal up $1,000 in 1 year for their homeowner's insurance. So sadly, too much government interference is causing all this. But I delight in meeting people, whether they're left, center, or right, because I need to know what their concerns are. And I have conversations. And my dear friend, Ann O'Neill, delightfully said yes. She and I served together in the Clark County Republican Party as I was state committee man. She was my state committee woman, representing the county Republican Party statewide. But she is my legislative aide. And if you call, if you email, if you want to come up to Olympia, please do. Nothing warms the heart of myself or Ann more than having our local constituents in. And every one of you is my constituent, truly. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because every decision I make impacts every single resident of the state of Washington. But my heart is here in Clark County. And if you come up, come on, we'll find time for you. So let me talk about a couple of other things that are happening. Pastor Rich talked about the assault on parental rights. It is unbelievable. We got something on the order of 455,000 signatures on the initiative that the people said, this is what we want. And it was an initiative of the state legislature. And if the legislature didn't adopt it and make it law, it would have gone on the state ballot. The Democrats were so afraid of it, they passed it into law. But sadly, these politicians had another thing in mind. Once they passed it into law, it is currently the law today, they can then introduce legislation to change it. And that is what they have done. And so in the House, a bill was put forward. And so how do you fight when you're in the minority? By the way, I'm one of 39 Republicans in the House. There are 59 Democrats. So we can't force anything unless we get a whole lot of Democrats to go our way. There are 20 brand new legislators, 12 brand new Republicans, 8 brand new Democrats. And in a macro sense, they're all wonderful people. I love my fellow freshmen on both sides of the aisle. And they're all good people, and they all believe they are doing what their constituents want. Then there's the leadership and the people in my mind that have been there too long. The leadership like to put their arm around your shoulder and say, hello, son, I love your passion, just go along. We'll explain it to you later. And the Democrats are very, very good at getting their freshman legislators and their sophomore legislators to go along. So the only thing Republicans can do is introduce amendments. So going back to this Parents' Bill of Rights modification, one of my Republican colleagues introduced an amendment, which then must be discussed in the committee and then voted on to accept or reject. Well, in the bill, the current policy that the Democrats have introduced says that if your child is assaulted, if your child is sexually abused, if some other violent act is committed upon your child, the school has at least 48 hours before informing the parents. It is absolutely horrific and unconscionable in my mind. So my Republican colleague introduced a bill that simply said, the minute school officials are informed about violence upon a child, they will immediately notify the parents. And on one level, the good news was the Democrats started a debate. And so our fellow Republicans were able to debate on it. The saddest part, though, a party line vote, the Democrats voted against immediately notifying parents. From the game of politics, we now have recorded Democrats arguing against notifying parents. We don't know how this will go. It's still got to come to the floor of the full House, and it's got to go to the floor of the Senate. And I am not remembering that House bill. Forgive me, in the midst of the 2000.
Tell them who the sponsor of that was.
And so the sponsor of that was Monica Stonier from the 49th District in Vancouver. But those are parts of the political battles that we fight. And the good news is we just try to ask good questions and allow the other side to occasionally come our way. We are doing some good things that are actually, hopefully, going to get some bipartisan support. After the COVID lockdowns, the pandemic, number one, shifting a little bit, we got sworn in on a Monday, and on a Wednesday, our new governor was sworn in. And I was prepared to have to sit on my hands and bite my lip. But the speech he gave was surprisingly moderate compared to the record he has had for the last 12 years as our Attorney General. And so many of us after the fact were saying, okay, is this the old Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope? He's pretending to be moderate, but in reality he is going to be the extreme person that he was for 12 years? I don't know, but there are some hints that he is going to govern a little more moderately. There are a couple of things that he talked about. One of the things I mentioned was the Climate Commitment Act that has raised the price of gas from 25 to 50 cents a gallon. And there's another bill in the House that wants to further raise the charge for those carbon burning permits that must be sold so that they can raise more money. And we are getting some indications that the governor doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to raise taxes overall. He would like to hold the line. Well, unless he vetoes something, unless the Democrats back off, we don't know. But will he use the bully pulpit? I hope. One of the things that was enacted in the Climate Commitment Act was there was a carve-out for our farmers, for the people that produce our food. And yet, for some strange reason, Governor Jay Inslee did not implement that part of the law. And so our farmers are having to pay the extra 25 to 50 cent plus a gallon for their diesel fuel when they harvest the food. And of course, yes, that all gets passed along in the cost of your groceries and the cost of your beef, your pork, whatever you're getting at the grocery store that they grow. And it's been hugely harmful. So we've got a bill, one of my friends, Representative Dent from Eastern Washington, introduced a bill. We just voted it out of the Environment and Energy Committee that I also serve on the other day, and it'll be coming to the floor of the House in the next couple of weeks. But back to Governor Bob Ferguson, in his speech from the floor, he talked about the farmers were promised an exemption from the Climate Commitment Act tax, and he wanted to see that exemption delivered. The Climate Commitment Act is the law of the land, and he wanted to see it delivered. And so that has set the stage for my friend Representative Dent to get his bill through the committee. There were a couple of Democrats that voted against it, but pleasantly, at least in the committee, the majority of Democrats voted in favor of it. I suspect because the Democrat governor gave it his verbal support. But we'll find out, we'll see. There's still a long time to go. I am known here in Clark County as Mr. No Tolls, Mr. No Light Rail, Mr. Transportation. I joined in this battle well over a decade ago with my dear friend David Medor, with another good friend, Miss Margaret Tweet, and her husband Doug. I have another friend who calls Margaret the librarian. She will research the dickens out of anything. And it is amazing what she will find and pass along, quote unquote, to her friends. And occasionally it's like, oh my gosh, what has Margaret uncovered today? Margaret, I'm not through the last one. But she digs and she digs and she researches, and it's wonderful. But at any rate, I ran to represent you on everything, but overwhelmingly to see if we can stop the I-5 interstate bridge. And it's a $7.5 billion project going up. They promised over a year ago the price was going up, but they won't tell us by how much. It's part of the game they play. I ran against the light rail. It's an outrageous boondoggle that's over a quarter of the cost of the entire project. So what were the first two bills I introduced on behalf of the citizens of Southwest Washington? My very first bill was to eliminate the permission to toll the I-5 interstate bridge. My second bill, thank you. So my second bill, in my mind, I was thinking, well, all right, we've got to kill the light rail component. So I'll introduce a bill to say no light rail. And then I thought about it, and I talked a little bit with my dear friend Ann, my legislative aide, and I said, no, I'm not going to say no to light rail. I'm going to say no to spending any Washington money on Oregon's light rail. So that if Oregon wants light rail on it, they can pay it. And no, trust me, I don't want the light rail either. But if you think we have budget problems, Oregon's got even worse problems. So if we were to put the whole cost of that light rail on Oregon, poof, it would disappear in a heartbeat. So on my committee, I'm talking to other people, and the chairman is usually pretty staunch. No, John, you don't understand. He's like, what? And I said, sir, I don't know, but I think this would save 500 million Washington taxpayer dollars. Where do you get that number, John? Well, they're saying $2 billion. The federal government at most will cover $1 billion, half, which means the two states have to come up with the other half. 500 million for Oregon, 500 million for Washington. And so I said, hey, I don't know what the final number for the light rail component will be, but it could save up to $500 million. And the chair of my committee, the Republican minority leader, was like, no way. I re-explained it again. He says, give me that. And he signed his name on the bill. I ended up getting 20 signatures of Republicans on the bill. And the good news is I feel very, very proud of that. The bad news is the Democrats are so afraid of it, they won't even give it a hearing. Because they are screaming crisis, crisis, crisis. And so I have a couple of freshman Democrats who need things for their district. And I said, listen, I want to offer you a piece of $500 million. Wouldn't that fix your roads? Wouldn't that fix your bus service? Wouldn't that fix that bridge you're trying to repair? I want to give it all to you. Yes, there are a lot of things I'd like to do, but we've got to kill this first. And so, delightfully, fun side story, I have been called the nicest guy in the legislature.
Oh, wow.
And everybody comes by, are you ever not smiling, John? No, I'm always smiling. But there's another freshman there, Greg Nance. He's from Gig Harbor, and he too is a pretty nice guy. But his constituents need ferry boats because he's got islands and they need more ways to get back and forth. And so he had a bill last week that was about a passenger-only set of ferries. And it was an amazing hearing. His hearing took up the entire 2 hours of the committee meeting when his bill was supposed to take up a half hour at most. And at the end, it was phenomenal. So that night, I emailed him and I said, Greg, that was an unbelievable hearing. As a freshman legislator, you had so many constituents saying, yes, we need this, please, 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 the ferry service is horrible. We need more, we need these fast passenger-only ferries. I said, brother, well done. Now you just need some seed money. Tell you what, if you sign on to my bill, there's $500 million and I'll fight tooth and nail right next to you in order to give you the biggest chunk of that. And the next morning we were in committee and it's like, Greg, well done, brother. He came up, he looked me in the aisle with a big grin and he says, thank you for that very kind email, John. And he paused and he says, but leadership. Yep, the leadership won't let him sign on to my bill. It's part of the game we play, but I share that with you for a little better understanding. But the most important thing is that right there. You can weigh in pro or con, you can weigh your words, you can choose. So let me talk about another thing that's coming up right now.
You want any slide changes?
And thank you, my sweetie. Giving me nudges. So we get 250, 300, 350 emails a day. And God bless her, my ledge aide Ann handles them, funnels them. We meet in the morning, we meet midday if I have time, and then in the evening, what's the hot topic? All right, here's how to respond to these and all of that. And last Monday morning, I got an email from a constituent that said, John, have you heard about the $1.6 billion tolling authorization? And I'm like, whoa, what? Wait a minute. Click, look, oh my gosh, introduced late Friday night was a bill that puts Washington State on the hook for $1.6 billion in borrowed money. So let me step back and say, Interstate Bridge, $7.5 billion, but they're telling everybody $6 billion. How are they going to pay for it? They're hoping to get $3.1 billion from the federal government. Washington State has already allocated $1.1 billion. State of Oregon's allocated $250 million with a promise for another $750 million. So $1 billion from Oregon. And then they were going to borrow $1.2 to $1.5 billion from Wall Street, paid back by tolls. So they say, here's a stream of revenue, tolls, and we will borrow it today, and then we'll pay it back over the future. Well, about 2 months ago, the Interstate Bridge team started talking $1.6 billion. Lo and behold, Monday morning, the bill came out. Gee, I got just the Senate version, and about 6 hours later, there was a House version introduced by my friend Jake Fye, the chairman of the House Transportation Committee. But I got this, I was like, oh my goodness, I sent it to our nonpartisan staff who researches transportation, and there's almost nothing Dana doesn't know. She's an amazing woman, and no answer back. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe she doesn't even know about it. So I forwarded it to Lars, and Lars came back, can you come on? What? So Lars Larson had me on at 12:25. He wanted me on later, but I had to be in a committee meeting at 1 o'clock. And so he says, I'll squeeze you in right after the news break. And so at 12:25, we broke the news. The language in this bill puts Washington State on the hook for the entire $1.6 billion that they want to borrow from Wall Street to be paid back for with tolling money. Now, this is supposed to be a bi-state bridge, right? Serving citizens on both sides of the river. Yet there is zero mention of the state of Oregon in the language of this. And then, as I dug into the language, it says it'll be paid for by revenues from the interstate bridge tolling. But if there's not enough revenues from I-5 bridge tolling, you can go take money from any of the other 5 tolling systems in Washington State. No, after you pay off the cost, you're supposed to have money for maintenance on the other tolling systems, and they're all in their own little buckets. But this bill allows us to pick the pockets of those other tolling system buckets. And then it says, and if there's not enough money there, you can go rob money from the gas tax that's supposed to be there to maintain our roads and bridges. And oh, by the way, if for some reason there's not enough money there, you can use general fund tax revenues from your sales tax, your property taxes, however you pay. And so that's the bill that I exposed on Lars last Monday. So we've been watching all week long, and Friday afternoon they said next week's schedule, and later this coming week this bill was supposed to come up for hearing. Will you advance to the next slide, my friend? All right, there's the $1.6 billion by Washington taxpayers. Slide on up to the next one. There you go. So this is the important thing. Earlier today, I got an email that said, this hearing is not next Wednesday or next Tuesday, it's tomorrow, Monday, at 1:30. And so my homework for you, my dear friends, is, as Jill alluded, you can go to the Washington State Legislature website. The bill number is HB for House Bill 1958. And what have I done? You can see in the search there, 1958. You need to, I've got circled in red, 2526. Because if you just type in the bill number, it may pull up 2324. And you can choose which year. You need to make sure it's the current cycle, 2025, 2026. And it'll pull up and it shows the sponsors are Jake Fye, our representative from the 49th Wiley, and then Representative Zahn. But at any rate, it is scheduled for a hearing. Next slide. And so there again, I emphasize you need to make sure you've got the 2526 chosen. Next slide. So over there on the right, sign up to testify, submit testimony. So that's where you go to click on the link. Next slide. And then it'll show you it's in the Transportation Committee Monday, it says 2/24/25 at 1:30 p.m. And then you can check which of the bills we'll be hearing you want to offer testimony on. In this case, so you check the box HB 1958 Interstate Bridge Toll Bonds, and you check the box. Next slide. And then you just scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can click on any one of the 4 links. You can testify in person, you can testify remotely, you can submit written comments, or that third one is I would like my position noted for the legislative record. And that's the fastest, easy one. You click on that, and that is where you ultimately get that wonderful 19,900 against and 234. And that's what we need to have happen by 1:30 tomorrow, ideally.
It says pro, con, or other when you go.
That's right. So next slide, my friends. So when you come in, it opens up another page, and there you can choose in the window pro, con, or other. And so you can choose anything you like, because this is a democracy. But my strong suggestion is choose con, and then you submit. Next slide. And then you check I'm not a robot and submit your registration. But at any rate, thank you. Final slide, I think. I forgot all about this. So this afternoon I went, there are already 5 individuals signed up. These are all the special interests that are getting all that pork barrel money from the Interstate Bridge project. They're going to be lining their pockets and getting all of it there. There's Mike Bomar from the Port of Vancouver. There's a WashDOT person. There's somebody from the building and construction trades. The mayor of Vancouver is there. And then Identity Clark County is all signed on in favor of. And so we need to load this up as much as possible with citizens, because we do look at that when we're in the committee. As we're debating issues and hearing public testimony, we go and look at what the pro and the con are. And before I go in, I'll scan through this written comments as well. But final slide. So at any rate, that's my last slide. The notolls.com, it's a wonderful website that a dear friend created long ago and far away. And he happens to be sitting in the back of the room. I took it over from him a while ago, and we're posting updated information on the tolling issue there, but it's a great, easy place to go. Somebody, Doug, you had a question, my friend. Yeah, and so, yeah, on the Clark County Today article, we spent this afternoon getting together an article, and there's a link in it, and it'll click, and it'll take you right to that website as well, that you can register your pro or your con. But at any rate, I delight in the opportunity to represent you. I'll let you know one more thing. Forgive me, my friends, I never run out of stories, but I truly love digging into the details on this. One of the many problems with the Columbia River crossing, before we thought we killed it, was they had spent $200 million of our money, and they wasted it. Well, somebody hired a forensic accountant who went through all the financial dealings on it and exposed the waste, fraud, and abuse in it. Tiffany Couch, she's an amazing lady. And she wrote 7 separate reports exposing different aspects of the fraud. It's not yet public, it's not yet done, but Friday I met with one of the government auditors, and he is working this weekend on a bill that I will introduce hopefully Monday or maybe Tuesday, asking the state auditor to do an audit of the Interstate 5 bridge replacement program. I don't know if I can get it passed, but it will put more pressure on the powers that be. And I will finally close. As people of faith, we all believe in hope, right? In a sense, we can act, we can put pressure on our city councils and on our other elected officials, but today, one of the most amazing things we have is President Donald Trump and something known as DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And so I have been teeing up, trying to get an appointment with Elon Musk and to bring Doge here into our community to look at this bridge. But we are leaving no stone unturned, trying to stop the waste of your money. So, Ms. Joe, I know I've gone on too long. Bless you, my friend.
Thank you for coming tonight. So I just wanted to give the number for that bill where they are basically gutting the Parents' Bill of Rights. And so that's SB Senate Bill 5181, and it's HB 1296. So get onto those websites and start letting your legislatures know that this is something that we, I have a question? SB 5181, HB 1296. Okay? So, what was I else going to say? So, you have to really be paying attention to these. For example, the governor was saying that, you know, he wanted to reform the governor's emergency powers, and so they got a bill to reform the governor's emergency powers, making him have to come back to the legislature every 30 days. Well, at the last minute, they did a little substitute bill. Because I had, you know, talked to Paul Harris up there and said, oh yeah, get behind the limiting emergency powers. And then they did this little substitute that just changed a couple of words, which ended up giving the governor more emergency powers. So you really have to pay attention. So thank you so much, John. So Connie, Joe, what was the quick little announcement you wanted to make? Come here. Connie Joe is another PCO.
Quick, how's that possible when you give someone a mic? Just talk fast. I used to represent you in the city council, and I actually had the privilege of sitting on the Clark County Council as the Senate, where'd that come from? As the representative for Camas and Washougal for 3 years. Every city in the county of Clark County is represented on that C-Tran board. And your city council members make decisions and they send marching orders with that representative to C-Tran to sit on that board. But you know, in a representative form of government that we have, we can give the marching orders, but they are representing us, and they don't always vote the way the people want them to. Sadly, Washougal, let me just back up. Washougal city council members, the majority, are against the light rail, but the mayor of Washougal, Molly Costin, is in favor of it, and she is the chairman of C-Tran. So you need to understand your local politics, and you need to speak. On my Facebook page, you see these bold letters in all caps, and it says, Washington, speak up. And that's my little notice that I'm going to give you something political. But you need to realize that this tomorrow night is an opportunity to go and speak to your city council members. Washougal meets tomorrow night. It's their last opportunity to make the decision to stand for or against. It's so vital that you participate. Now, John's representing us at the state level. We're talking about our little town, Washougal. We're talking about Camas. We're talking about La Center, Battleground. We've got La Center here, City Council, Battleground. Anyways, point being, one more thing. I